So, yeah, so today I'll tell you about how these intelligent agents or cyborgs in wider sense from science fiction serve basically as a paradigm for human bodily and cognitive enhancement. So basically, because today, with the emerging technological developments across various scientific fields, we, on a daily basis, witness radical changes in the ways we perceive and define what it means to be human in today's highly technologically oriented society. So we see the advancements in robotics, AI research, molecular biology, genetic engineering, nanotechnology, medicine, etc. And these are still mostly in experimental phase, but they are gradually becoming a part of our daily life, especially if we talk about, like for medical purposes, they are being now developed. Medical purposes still and military industry for now, but it's a matter of time when they will become available to wider users. So given that human enhancement and emergence of autonomous artificial beings have long been a part of futures imagined in science fiction, it is exactly these science fiction narratives that can serve as a fruitful ground for analyzing ethical, moral, social, legal, and even pragmatic issues the ubiquitous use of human enhancing devices is bringing about. So I will further on present some of the selected examples of existing real-life cyborgs, which emerge from scientific but also artistic experiments to show that science fiction narratives are not merely limited to the scope of imagination, but that they are a constituent part of our lived experience. So first, from like some terms that we use almost on a daily basis, and that actually have roots in science fiction are, for example, the term robot, which was first used in Karel Čapek's play Rossum's Universal Robots in 1921. But the term itself was coined by his brother Joseph, and he used it in this play. Then, for example, we have the term cyberspace. It's also coming from science fiction. It was coined by William Gibson in his 1984 novel Neuromancer, and he described it as a consensual hallucination, a graphic representation of data abstracted from the banks of every computer in the human system. And also, for example, the first visualization of virtual reality, let's say, was in the film Tron in 1982. So all these serve as some kind of an inspiration for scientists who develop all these technologies and the devices who generate these technologies or interfaces. If we take a look at the history of artificial agents, we see basically that with every technological breakthrough, innovation or revolution, we always imagined possible futures that new technologies at hand might bring about, for better or for worse, whether if these visions are utopian or dystopian. So in our predictions, we basically projected our hopes and fears onto the future. And it is actually in literature, art and in film that actually that these narratives have not only had an important role in shaping the ways we imagine the future of humanity, but they also somehow prepare us to adapt to and gradually accept the idea of technologically mediated existence. And to accept the idea of human enhancement, basically these science fiction narratives constitute our collective imaginary, how we think about the future, how we think about intelligent artificial agents, etc. And also in the history, for example, we have a long history of these kind of creatures, let's call them this way. For example, in literature, we have Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. Then we have Frank L. Baum's Tin Man, Edgar Allan Poe's General Winfield Scott, whose body is composed of prostheses. Then, for example, I forgot about also Asimov's 3 laws of robotics that also come from science fiction, basically from the novel I, Robot, which are used as like ethical and moral ground on which to build artificial agents. Yeah. So now the like historical overview of how we imagined. For example, in visual arts, we had like the imagining the human organism as an industrial complex, as a machine, and in film also we have, for example, Fritz Lang, Metropolis, Charlie Chaplin's Modern Times, which basically examines the relation between human and technological environment. And these are only but a few examples. There are many, many more examples in the history of technologically augmented or enhanced bodies, which represent the merger of biological and artificial, natural and monstrous, human and the machine. But the proliferation of modern cyborg forms, imagined through art, fiction and popular culture, actually emerged in the second half of 20th century, along with the development of telecommunication technologies, advancements in military industry, entertainment industry, computer science, cybernetics, robotics, cognitive science, digital imaging, space travel exploration, etc. The very term cyborg actually was coined by two scientists, Nathan Klein and Manfred Kleins, in their 1960 article Cyborgs and Space. And this term was used to describe the advantages of self-regulatory human-machine system, adjustable to different environments, invasive for human body. And actually the first cyborg in the history was neither a monstrous product of science fiction nor a cybernetically enhanced human being. It was this little guy here, the mouse, which had a Rose osmotic pump implanted under his skin. And this pump basically injected chemicals into the organism at a controlled rate, and thus creating a self-regulatory closed system. And the idea of these two scientists was to apply similar system on astronauts and in that way to solve space travel problems such as fluid intake or output, cardiovascular control, blood pressure, etc. and to leave a human free to explore, to create, to think and to feel. Basically the machine would take care of the bodily function, leaving the brain to do more creative and more like higher level stuff, tasks. So while speaking of such a perfect astronaut, these two scientists actually identify a new form of biotechnological organism that has ever since strongly influenced the ways we imagine, construct and define the body in relation to technological development. And since then, until the 80s, this term was broadened very much, and it was widely used in both science fiction and in scientific research. But only after the publication of now famous Cyborg Manifesto by Donna Haraway in 1985, I think, the notion of cyborg was given broader attention in academic intellectual circles. And what she did is basically she took the figure of cyborg to outline a new provocative post-human figure and to initiate new philosophical and biopolitical orientations as well as disciplines such as now known as cyborgology or cyborg theory, which became the central concepts not only in the works of academics, but also for political scientists, military historians, medical doctors, computer scientists, etc. So basically, her manifesto was the milestone which opened a new perspective in theoretical thought on how technologies impact and redefine the notion of human. I will not go into detail about the manifesto, but we'll just kind of take this sentence as something that underlines this whole talk, which is that the boundary between science and fiction and social reality is an optical illusion. And she actually speaks about blurring the boundaries between all these Cartesian opposites, like male, female, natural, artificial, etc., present and the future even. So cyborg is actually the figure standing in between. Cyborg is this, in her manifesto, is this hybrid figure that basically embodies all the opposites. Also, she noted that the present and the future are collapsing as never before, because we live in the time where these futures, as imagined in science fiction, that include ubiquitous networking, humanoid robots, artificially grown tissues and body parts, prosthetic extensions of body, implants, artificial intelligence, genetic modification, alterations, and crossbreeding, are actually palpable, and they have already become, or are in the process of becoming, the scientific and social reality of the present. So, this is why also William Gibson is right when he says that the future is already here. It is not yet evenly distributed. So as the technologies develop and change at an ever greater pace, the notion of cyborg is changing accordingly. Basically, the way we imagine the cyborg is changing. So one of the examples to show these changes in the last, let's say, 2 decades is the film Terminator, where in the first part we had this like masculine coded, like rough, indestructible, unstoppable, aggressive and potent body. And then already in the second part we had this uncanny, amorphous, liquid metal that can take any shape, any form. Then again we return to Donna Haraway's blurring of boundaries. We had the female cyborg, which was also blurring the gender boundaries, especially because in the beginning of new media technologies, it was like all this like technological sphere was basically male dominated, and now now we have like a female subject put in the position of the male subject. And finally, yeah, and I don't want to comment on the quality of the third part of Terminator. And finally, in the last part, we have basically a human being. We have this cyborg, this machine, who doesn't even know that he's a machine, because his heart and brain were transplanted into a synthetic body, basically artificial body, and he's not aware of not being human until he has an injury and then discovers that his body is prosthetic. So we have this artificial agent who is no different than human being. And yeah, this is how actually technologies progressed from the first part that we had from hardware to wetware. And this transformation is still an ongoing process, so it is very difficult to give a unified or conclusive definition of a cyborg. So instead of some definition, it's better to simply outline the key characteristics of these creatures, and that is that it is a simultaneously imaginary concept and practical material development of possible couplings between human or any other biological organism and machine, that is biological and technological. So roughly identified, it can stand for a robotic body or virtual body, which is usually paired up and governed by AI, or technologically modified and enhanced biological organism, or sometimes the combination of the two, as the last guy in the Terminator. So science fiction, and especially cyberpunk, with its dystopian visions of very near future, has proven to be more agile in keeping up with the pace of technological development than production of academic theoretical frameworks that deal with the impact of these phenomena and very often precede them. Also, the scientific research is, with all the ethical approvals and budgets and everything, it's not so quick to imagine and to respond and to show what the possible uses of certain technologies may be. So that is one of the reasons we actually turn to science fiction texts to see what the possibilities are and what any of the technologies we have might bring about. And also today we are witnessing like lots of remakes of films that were done in the 80s and beginning of 90s, such as Total Recall, Judge Dredd, RoboCop, In Time, and now I think they're negotiating to make the remakes of Ghost in the Shell and Dune even. So So these are actually the films and novels. Some of the films are based on. Yeah, now they're negotiating to do a sequel of Blade Runner as well. Yeah, and they basically show much quicker what are we to expect from the outcomes of the technologies that are being developed at present. So if we take a look at artificial intelligence or artificial agents as the paradigm for human cognitive augmentation, some of the most important issues are basically those of authenticity and simulation, that is original and the copy. And they are also very often found in science fiction and cyberpunk films and literature. And these are actually the issues that include consciousness, emotion, and memory of artificially created organisms. And these issues distort and undermine the status of human superiority in relation to all other species, regardless of whether they are organic or artificial. So the idea that someone's identity is made up of a collection of personal experiences and memories is being shaken by the collapse of boundaries that Donna Haraway spoke about, by this overlapping and merging of the past, present, and the future, through which the human memory as an archive of facts is simply relativized, and it can no longer be considered a guarantee of pure human existence. Or as Dani Cavallaro has put it in her book Cyberpunk and Cyberculture, memories tend to take an increasingly prosthetic form, as images that do not result from personal experience, but are actually implanted in our brains by the constant flow of mass information. And to this I would also add it is not only the constant flow of mass information that we access most commonly through the internet, but it is also the possibilities of invasive or non-invasive direct brain stimulation that can significantly alter cognitive, perceptual, or emotional processes, as well as blur our conception of reality and authenticity. One of the examples in science fiction is a 1990 movie, Total Recall, based on Philip K. Dick's short story called We Can Remember It For You the Wholesale, where memory implantation or erasure does not only change the perception of personal experience, but everything considered to be a lived reality is turning out to be a construct, a mere simulation. So on the top of that, artificial memories are so perfectly blended into one's history that they constitute what one is. Or as Philip K. Dick explained in this story, he says, after all, an illusion, no matter how convincing, remained nothing more than an illusion, at least objectively, but subjectively quite the opposite entirely. So back in the real world, in a recent article in Wired magazine called The Forgetting Pill, the author of this article, John Allaire, has mapped the discoveries found by several neuroscientists who work in the field of memory, and whose research can be considered a foundation of an emerging science of forgetting. So, in the search for solutions to post-traumatic stress disorder, anxiety disorder, addictive behaviors, etc., scientists have come to understand that memories, once they are formed, do not remain the same, but are transformed by the very act of recollecting those memories. So every time we recall an event, the structure of the memory in the brain is altered in the light of the present moment. And studies have shown that basically one memory is not located in one place where it just sits there intact and waiting for us to access it. Instead, it is a moldable construct, and different aspects of one memory are stored in different areas of the brain. So, for example, emotions connected to a memory are stored in amygdala, and the cinematic scene, the event itself, is separated into visual, auditory, and other elements and distributed in the matching sensory areas of the brain. So this means that each aspect of a memory can be accessed and altered separately. And accessing the memory triggers a set of neural connections between these memory compartments in the brain, and in this process is enabled by protein synthesis. So what does it mean shortly? If protein synthesis is chemically inhibited prior to the recollection of a memory, it simply disables the necessary neuron connection. And if neurons do not connect, there is no memory. So far the researchers have discovered the so-called PKM-zeta protein that hangs around synapses, and blocking this specific protein means blocking a single specific memory when one attempts to recall it. But to be more precise, it's not like a person does not forget the whole memory, but certain aspects of it. It's not like in total recall to completely have the erased memories. So it can be either an emotional reaction, smell, some words, or looks of someone. And if this research continues the way it started, the act of remembering may actually become a choice. Which is cool on one hand, but especially if we have this post-traumatic stress disorder or some really medical conditions that require and that would make people live better with these kinds of interventions. But we have to also consider the possibility of abuse. So we have to ask the question who and by whom these pills are going to be used and for what purposes. Given that we often learn and gain wisdom from our experience, erasing those from one's memory at will would strongly affect and fundamentally actually change our sense of self as we enter this carefully engineered synthetic evolution. So also memories and standardized emotional responses as the affirmation of human existence are another preoccupation of Philip K. Dick and are actually a central topic of the film Blade Runner, which was based on his novel Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, in which replicants, these artificial beings which are produced by Tyrell Corporation, are seemingly no different than humans. So the only way to actually determine whether they are human or artificial agents, or actually replicants, is to undertake the so-called Voigt-Kampf test. And this test consists of emotionally provocative questions and a polygraph-like machine that monitors and measures empathic reactions. So due to the absence of past or personal history and the inability to build an identity based on this history, replicants all have an expiry date after which they are to be retired or killed. And more importantly, they are retired because after a certain period of time, they tend to develop their own memories and emotional responses, which makes them difficult, if not impossible, to control. So, in other words, what we can conclude from this is that humans aspire to creating artificial intelligence, but the kind of artificial intelligence that we can actually be in control of. And in this film, the solution to this autonomous, independent artificial intelligence problem is solved by implanted memories that can be controlled. These memories were implanted into a new experimental model, Rachel, and it actually made her unaware of the fact that she is a replicant. She also thought of herself as a human because of having memories and because of having her history. So she actually takes simulation to be authentic experience. And those memories actually belong to someone else, but still they give her this existential ground to stand on. And as a confirmation of her human existence, she has a photograph of her and her mother, and she desperately hangs on to this photograph as a proof of her past, of her existence in the past, which gives her this continuous integrity of self, which is rooted in that past. And these implanted memories actually make her a perfect simulacrum. She's a realization of Tyrell Corporation's motto, which is more human than human. And it shows and raises actually yet another question in the film, and that is the question of what makes us human after all, when all the human characters in the film are represented as cold, inert, asocial, while replicants are those who express all the virtues of humaneness. So ethics, free will, empathy, dreams, memories, and all those values attributed exclusively to humans, which make us humans, are brought into question and radically redefined through popular representations of humanoid robots, androids, and replicants who are created or developed in such a way to be able to express perhaps even more humaneness than humans. And it's funny that the purpose of creating human-like machine is, among other things, to improve the living conditions or explore human consciousness and bodily functions. But somehow there was this paradoxical twist that occurred, which made our humanoid machines a paradigm for human transformation into a desired technologically augmented or organic machine. Or as Don Haraway has put it in this Cyborg Manifesto, our machines are becoming increasingly lively while we are becoming more and more inert. So even though we are still far from creating synthetic life and synthetic intelligence as depicted in Blade Runner, in terms of autonomy, we tend to attribute some sort of liveliness to our machines, and we actually in interaction with the machines, we tend to anthropomorphize the machines. But this does not tell so much about machines as it tells us about humans and the new affective abilities that we develop through interactions with our machines. Even though these machines can be human-like, they do not possess consciousness, at least not in the way us humans do. However, that doesn't mean that they will not develop one, which does not necessarily have to be to have human qualities and to be under human control. At present, these intelligent agents. One example is the work of Professor Hiroshi Ishikuro, who builds androids. So he made replica of himself and of some other people. And also some of his androids are in theater plays together with human actors, and it's really, really impressive. You can find it on YouTube. And what he said that the purpose of building them is to test the existing hypothesis on human agency, intelligence, and nature, which may bring us closer to understanding what being human means. These androids are teleoperated, but they also have a certain degree of autonomy. They have face and speech recognition, and they are able to respond not only verbally but also by facial and body movements that express a wide range of human emotions. And in his opinion, the appearance of such machines is very important, and the more human they look like, the more we are likely to convey a human interaction with these machines. But can we actually consider this kind of mimicry of interaction as human interaction, or as Sherry Turkle has put it, are we alone together in this powerful and almost enchanting presence of these machines? Because we communicate, but we don't have the response back. So even though we feel that we are interacting, we are actually alone together with these machines. So these are the agents, and now I'd like to switch to how human beings are actually being modified to be more perfect, faster, more durable as the machines that we build. So in science fiction there are many examples of these enhanced humans, such as, for example, in Gibson's novel Neuromancer, there is Case, who is surgically wired for jacking into cyberspace. Also Molly with her optical implants and nail blades, or Johnny Mnemonic. Also, I don't know if you saw the film. Yeah, it's also based on William Gibson's story, Johnny Mnemonic, whose brain is modified to serve as a database that he does not have access, but is merely a data carrier. And also protagonists in the film Matrix that they have this plug-in in their it's a merger of biological and technological. So it seems that Yeah, so these are the examples in fiction, but today with the technological development that we have, it seems that Donna Haraway's claims about blur boundaries between science fiction and social reality has proved to be true, considering that many of the concepts of science fiction are being materialized through scientific research and new media art practices, especially during the last 2 decades. And they are becoming actually a part of our present experience. So, technological bodily modifications are practiced today, as I mentioned, mostly for medical treatment purposes, and prostheses and implants are used as replacements of missing or dysfunctional body parts. However, there are experiments that are also being done on healthy individuals who use these prostheses and implants or genetic modification as bodily extension, as an access. So it's for the purposes of perfecting our given biological abilities. And among many others, these experiments include scientific work of Professor Kevin Warwick, who conducted experiments on his own body. Then Stellark, who is an artist, his prosthetic bodily augmentation, or also a bio and transgenic art project by Eduardo Katz. And in various scientific and even non-scientific fields, researchers, artists, techno-enthusiasts, and homebrew cyborgs, they are all exploring this possibility of expanding human capacities in order to overcome biological constraints and create more powerful, more resilient, and more durable bodies which can actually adapt to the complex workings of the machine. So in this sense, the idea is to have the restraining and limiting human body technologically enhanced in order to be able to exist in technologically mediated environments and to become an integral part of such eco-techno systems. So the work of Kevin Warwick, professor of robotics at Reading University, and as of recently, I think that he's a dean at Coventry. Yes. He actually looked into many future scenarios found in science fiction narratives, and he said, "Okay, so let's see what can really be done from all this like science fiction imaginary futures," and. So he looked at what was being accomplished so far in the fields of artificial intelligence, robotics, and biomedicine, and what might the practical application of these technologies mean. And he conducted various experiments. First was like implanting RFID chip under his skin. And with this, he was able to actually control certain areas in the building of Reading University. For example, the door would open, his computer would say hello when he enters, like his presence would turn on the light, and when he leaves, the light would go off, etc. But further, he went into more complicated neurosurgical procedure, where he actually had a different different chip, which was basically like he had electrodes connected to his neurons also in his hand, and with this he was able to move a robotic hand from the distance. He was at the university in New York, I think, and the robotic hand, which was back in Reading, was moving, and he was also receiving sensory feedback, like of touch from the robotic hand. Then his wife also got a little like implant, and they could. This was the first example of brain-to-brain communication, even though it was rudimentary. They could like telegraphy, like with the hand movement, they could communicate like simple yes or no or something like this, like on distance. Yeah. So the next. The next example is Eduardo Katz, who also, like just a few months before Kevin Warwick, did also like this chipping with RFID implant, and but it was in a different context. This guy is an artist, and he did this in a gallery space, so that means that it was not behind the closed door of an academic institution, it was open to public. And what he did with, when he inserted the chip in his leg, he scanned it and he registered himself in the States in this registry for pets. And he registered himself both as a pet and as the owner of the pet. And with this, he kind of blurred the boundaries between species, which is also another theoretical concept found in Donna Haraway's Cyborg Manifesto. And this was in '97, but afterwards he had a lot of transgenetic art projects. And my favorite one is how he created Edunia, which is Eduardo and Petunia flower. He took his DNA and combined his DNA with the seed of flower Petunia, and in the pink flowers, you know, the little veins that the flowers has. So in these red veins is actually his blood, that is his DNA. And he had some other similar projects also with I don't know if you saw the this fluorescent rabbit Alba. No, it's also his. Yeah. So that's basically one of the artists who do this kind of cyborgian and interspecies experimentations. And finally, another guy I wanted to, both Katz and Kevin Warwick focus. They address the issues of identity, of memory, of safety, of privacy, surveillance, and everything like and similar phenomena in our digital culture. And the last guy I wanted to present is Stellark, an artist who's been very active since the 60s and 70s. And his first works in the 60s and 70s were actually like a piercing of skin and like hanging on like hooks on the cranes in the city of New York, somewhere above the sea. And actually he was making a point that the body is a structure to be, it's not a place for the psyche or the social, it's a structure to be monitored and modified. The body not as a subject, but as an object. Not as an object of desire, but as an object for designing. And from the 80s, he started working with robotics, with communication technologies, and his basic premise is that the body is obsolete, and that it needs to kind of keep pace with technological development. So he literally, in all his performances, he takes his body as an object, and he usually refers to himself as the body or the artist. He never says I when he speaks about his project. And he has literally embodied robotics, microelectronics, plastic surgery, biotechnologies, genetic engineering, artificial intelligence, digital design, communication systems, and in this way he was turning himself into a cyborg in many different ways. And some of his works include suspensions, it's the ones with the cooks, the third hand. The third hand was done in the 80s, like 80 or 81. It's a robotic hand which he controls by contracting the muscles on his leg. And he was speaking about this in terms like in the beginning he had to think which muscles of the leg to move, but after a while of practice it became natural. He didn't even have to think about, like, he knew how to move the hand, and he was appearing in many other performances of his with this hand. But this is something that, yeah, you can like put on and take off. And as I was showing on the example of the Terminator, how the technological development progresses, that's how also our becoming cyborg also changes. So from this kind of metal hand, which is like an extension, a prosthesis, he came to the wetware prosthesis, which is the third ear, and it is organically grown. But the ear is like, it's not just being dislocated from its place where it's supposed to be, and it's not an organ of hearing, but this ear emits sounds. It also has a Bluetooth connection, so basically anywhere he is, you can access through the internet and hear everything in his immediate surrounding. And another plan is to also have it as like a communication system. So if he speaks to someone, like for example Skype or something, he would hear the voice inside his head, and when he opens his mouth, that voice, a voice of the other, would come out. Yeah, but this is the last phase, which is only planned, and also in this last phase, he has to like lift up this part because it's still kind of yeah. And when you touch it, which I did, when you touch it, it's really it feels as if it belongs there. It's not, because it's like under his skin, and the skin had like a mold. How do you call it? Like the skin was stretched before they put the implant. Yeah, so it's just, yeah, it feels like it's supposed to be there, even though it looks really weird. But also between these two projects, I picked these two images and these two projects because they show very nicely how our idea of cyborgs and artificiality and human enhancement changes. What are the visions of our human perfection in relation to technologies? But he also did. Just let me find to be more precise. Yeah. He had like a digitally created avatar called Prosthetic Head, which was like it's a program, computer program, like it appears as his head, and you can actually communicate. It's like artificial intelligence. Also, he had this like internal robotic prosthesis. When they asked him for some in Australia from some biennial to like make a sculpture for some environment, he basically made a stomach sculpture with medical doctors and engineers, and his stomach was inflated, and he swallowed this like a huge capsule, which in his stomach actually opened and like had a light and was turning like a little, how do you call it? The thing that you sit on and ride in circle. So it was like this, yeah. So this was like a spatial structure, sculpture, and one of my favorites ones is when he connected his body through sensors and actuators to a computer, and he was a part of cybernetic feedback loop, and his movements were not controlled by him, but by the internet data flow. And the other version of that performance was to be controlled by remote agents through like remote users on the internet. So you could just come on the website, you have this like little interface to press his hand, and he would like involuntarily move his hand. And basically this was his way of showing that the body is not like what I said in the beginning about his work. It's not a structure for psych or the social, and that it's not only for one self, but that it can be inhabited by other agents. So if you look at the ubiquitous use of computers today in ways which were unimaginable only half a century ago, and how we can now not imagine everyday life without these technologies that we use on a daily basis, it seems quite reasonable to wonder whether technologically modified bodies, as imagined and created today, will in the future be a matter of choice or an imperative. So embracing technological and synthetic enhancement as a norm may result in the emergence of new formations of social classes, where one's place in society will not be determined by identity, as we know, but it will be determined by technological entity. And this poses, I think, that in creating these technologies and in like pushing them, like and giving them, like simply introducing them into more wider social context, we should definitely ask the questions such as would those who choose not to upgrade or cannot afford technological enhancement be marginalized and considered obsolete and less competitive? What would be the optimal ways to regulate education, job market, healthcare system, and other areas of life that our very existence depend on? And how will we further cope with the vortex of changes and challenges technologies brings upon us over and over again in this perpetual loop of our future present? And that's basically it.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions, comments?
Yeah, about 5.
Oh. Okay, shoot.
Yeah, it was very interesting, really. I'm totally not in the field, so I'm blown up with some of your concepts. For example, there is one thing that I should know, maybe, but I do not. Where there was the 3 laws of Asimov. There was one extra, like 0.
Oh, yeah.
About humanity.
Let me go back. Oh, it's this one.
Is it where this comes from? Or is it something that Asimov later realized, oh...
Yeah, he later revised this and added this zeroth law, which basically annuls completely the first 3, because it says a robot may not harm humanity or by inaction allow humanity to come to harm, which means that he can actually injure or kill a human being in order for the well-being of the humanity as a whole, which gives a robot even more autonomy, like the drones we have in Iraq and Pakistan, and like, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it was like written by Asimov also, but just later.
Yeah. But I don't remember where later, because this came actually from the discussion with Misha, my husband, who is very much into science fiction, and he is a writer and everything. So he actually told me about this 0th law, and I checked like Wikipedia and some other pages, and I found it there, but I didn't check where it came from. But I know that later on he added this one.
And then, I think a few slides later, you talked about this cyborgs in space with the picture of the
Oh,
mouse,
yeah. Hold on. Yeah, this one. Yeah.
Yeah, this one. 1960.
Yeah.
So it's pretty old. But do you know what the mouse actually was having?
Yeah, it's called Rose osmotic pump.
What pump?
Rose osmotic pump. Rose is some kind of scientist who figure out this like injection on like certain time frames, kind of on certain programmed when to inject certain chemical in the organism. Yeah.
But
So
it's random or unimportant kind of chemical which has been.
Well, it depends. It depends what experiments you conduct. So anything. The point of this rose osmotic pump is that it is kind of not just attached, but it's like injected into, like just put under the skin.
Yeah, but
and it has its own timing when and what dose of a chemical is injected into organism.
So that's the point.
Yeah.
So capsule itself controls what's going on.
Yeah. So this is the concept that they actually wanted to apply on astronauts.
And does it somehow react to the environment, or it's just pre-programmed beforehand?
I don't know about this specific one, but I think they said that it's a closed system. It's a closed cybernetic system. So this one probably not. But their idea for space travel
to the actual state of the organism.
Yeah.
And this is the first occurrence of such thing.
Yeah.
Before that actually went to a normal clinical practice when people are using it for.
Yeah, probably it
damages
existed.
or-
Yeah, probably it existed, but in this concept and as in the concept of like coining this term cyborg, like cybernetic organism as a closed system, it's definitely the first time.
Oh, okay. So where
Yeah.
is cyborg term?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's from
Oh.
these two guys, Manfred E. Kleins and Nathan S. Klein. They it's a short article. I think you can find it online. Cyborgs in space. That's where the term comes from.
Okay. Sorry, I have
No,
bad memory.
take your time.
Then, okay, definition of cyborg. So here we have it. And when you define it later on, I think on the next slide, there was kind of definition of what cyborg is.
Yeah, but it's a very arbitrary. It's a very arbitrary definition. It's not to be taken as like final.
Okay,
as
yeah.
you know, it's like I focused on what aspects of cyborgs I was talking about throughout the whole talk.
Okay.
So yeah,
Because there is a lot about virtual bodies. So it can be totally virtual.
Yeah.
So I take an online game and the avatars there
yeah.
are cyborgs then, or what makes them cyborg? You know.
Well, it depends. If they are governed by artificial intelligence, then they are not cyborgs. But it depends if they actually how this intelligence is developed. Is it like from top-down principles to be completely programmed, or from bottom-up to let it develop and learn from experience? So if it develops, then it has like some of the human capacities, and then it's a bit blurry whether if it's natural or artificial, and or it can be simply teleoperated by someone, which means that it's the combination of the two. And like also the thing that you do in the Department of Cybernetics, what's it called when they think that they talk with the avatar? But
You mean Wizard of Oz experiment?
yeah, Wizard of Oz. Yeah, so it depends. It depends.
But shouldn't it be, this org should be for organic part?
Yeah, that's my point.
Yeah,
That's my point.
yeah.
Because if it's the virtual environment, virtual body controlled by AI, I don't see any organism. I know you mean there might be some algorithms that are inspired by nature.
Yeah.
That makes them a bit organic.
Yeah.
I think this is too artificial.
It is. It is.
I also feel that there should be some pseudo-hardware involved if you
Yeah.
talk about
Yeah.
cyborgs. So,
Yeah.
for example, if those artificial bodies or avatars are controlled by real brain, then, or something which is grown in the petridation is kind of biological, then I would call it a cyborg. But otherwise, it's just an
Artificial creature. Yeah.
Also, there is another connected question. What exactly is Android? What is the definition of Android? It's
Human-like machine.
Human-like machine.
Yeah.
So this could be virtual because it's kind of.
Say that again.
Can there be a virtual Android?
Well, they usually refer to like robotic or synthetic bodies, like kind of
Okay, so
in a
usually
human shape,
simulates
like not
human as a whole.
Yeah. But I took the term cyborg because it's really vague. Because, for example, I found in many places that lots of authors refer to what's this guy from the Terminator, Arnold Schwarzenegger in the Terminator, in the first part, where he's like clearly only a robot, only artificial. He's not a human. It's a machine, but with certain human abilities. And they also refer to him as a cyborg. So that was one of the reasons I considered a possibility of having those artificial but human-like forms also considered cyborgs. And also the other reason is this blurring of the boundaries, where you can no longer decide what's artificial and what's natural. Yeah, I'm not happy. I'm not happy with this either. But that was like kind of the rough. I just put it roughly, not as a like that's it and it cannot be differently.
You had some other question?
I think I had more, but these three I pinpointed like you need a question, huh?
Okay.
I think I had more, but feel free to come up with yours, huh?
So may I?
Yeah,
I have a little bit more general discussion, because in literature and in movies, everybody is more focused on the physical layer or physical, part of these things. So if we are change the viewpoint from level above, so I think that it doesn't matter if I have the computer in my head or in my desk, from the point of view of the behavior. If Andrzej is using his computer almost all the time, so I think that it doesn't matter
if it's a prosthesis or an implant,
in his head
or being external.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So I guess that we are already cyborg in definition number 2.
Yeah.
Technologically enhancement, because you are using your computer to enhance your memory, for example. And I guess it doesn't matter if it is wireless on the desk or in your head. So.
I gave a talk in last semester to students. It was exactly about the technologies we use on a daily basis, and like whether it's smartphones or I don't know, like not only the devices, the kind of devices that we use, but also social networking, access to information through search engines, about how this has already changed us. It has changed the way we think, the way we communicate to one another. And I was talking about this in the context of how we identify ourselves. Like, who am I if I am me here in this physical space, but I am also my Facebook profile, my, I don't know, LinkedIn profile, and my avatar in a video game. So, and most importantly, how these digital constructs of the self actually reflect back on you, because it simply changes you. And like with Google and Wikipedia and Google Maps and everything, we also perceive our environment differently. We don't access it directly as we used to do, but through Google Maps. If we are going to an unknown place, if we are looking for the best restaurant in I don't know, Slovenia or something. So our immediate environment is already mediated through technology. So this basically changes the sense of orientation. Also, we are so used to having any information at hand, like to kind of, let's Google it, let's check this. So we are actually relying on this external prosthesis, and in this sense, it doesn't, as you said, it doesn't matter if it's like chipped in or if it's outside. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the point.
Yeah.
We are all already modified.
Yeah, exactly.
And for me, it's more interesting how it works already than to examine how to implement it directly into the body.
Yeah, but I'm considered also about these questions. Though I also in my own research I was more doing working on this topic of what is happening now. Let's not go into predicting the future and go all transhumanist and like seeing the salvation in the technology. No, I was actually analyzing what's going on now, like to stop at this moment and see how we have already changed. So I was actually doing this, but the topic of this is just different. Yeah.
Actually, I will subscribe to any of it. It's blurring the boundaries between the computer and the human and even genders. But how does it blur the boundary between now and the future? It's still
because okay, you have to read William Gibson. You have to read all of William Gibson's novels. Yeah, there's not much. There's only 9. There's only 9 books, but it's like 3 trilogies. Yeah. How? Because we talk about the future, what future will bring, but some of these like futuristic technologies are already present. Not on daily basis. Like this, like smartphone was a futuristic technology in Star Trek, let's say, something like this. Yeah.
Yeah, of course, but it was future then, and now the future is the.
Yeah, but it was once. Yeah, but it was only. Yeah, and all these like futures in the past. Many of the things imagined in the future never came to be. Yeah. And when you looked at it at that moment, just as you look some futuristic technology at this moment, there's no difference. You just move like 20 years, you know, back or forth. It was something unimaginable in reality. Imagine, like when we saw Star Trek at that time, what was the computing power? Like processors were like funny, Now, when we are talking about these futuristic technologies, most of the stuff does not necessarily have to come true in like 10 or 20 years. But some of the stuff that seems now as science fiction, and even though it's in the labs already developed, it doesn't mean that it will live on. But there's also a big chance that it will. Like some of the things, like for example, artificial organs, artificial tissues. It's great for like it will solve the problem of organ transplantation, but we can also use it to
make a Frankenstein's monster.
Exactly.
Oh, but it's just you only say that it's going faster, or just
it is.
Develops. Yeah, but it's still not barring that, you know. There is clear distinction between, I mean, in a sense, in a physical sense, there is still. Okay.
Yeah, if you look at it that way, as like linear.
If you mean futurology or whatever it's called, yeah, in that case.
Yeah.
What's predicted is already probably existing somewhere.
Exactly, and it's predicted based on what is existing.
If you mess with my causality, then we are doomed.
Okay. All right.
So, any other comments?
That was actually one of my questions forgotten.
About the past and the future.
Yes.
Yeah, it's really in this context that what Gibson said, that the future is already here. It's not yet evenly distributed, because not all the people at all times have access to certain technologies that are already available, but in very limited.
This was always true.
Yeah.
It's just, you know, now it's kind of more concentrated because there are many things which.
Many things going on at the same time in different scientific fields.
Yeah, but in principle, it has been always the case. I mean, it's not evenly distributed. For example, I don't know, the
anything.
Writing.
I know. Yeah. It's still not yet evenly distributed. Yeah. Okay.
Thanks.
So we are done with all the questions, comments.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thanks. So you are not technologist, right? You said you are like in art or
theory of art and new media technologies. But I'm a theorist, and